India's gender or third gender as such. Third gender. Third gender. So as you all know, the landmark case of Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India, which struck down Section 377 of IPC to decriminalize same-sex relation between consenting adults. And it was presided by the NALSA judgment of 2014 that gave them the right of self-identification and recognized them as a third gender. Now, the issue of, or generally, how the third gender is legally defined in India and what are their rights. So, the concept of third gender is not new, and references of third gender's identity can be seen in the texts like Mahabharata and Ramayana and the classical books. And as per census 2011, total population of transgender is around 4.88 lakh in India. Now, how we can define the transgender? So, according to Transgender Persons Act 2019, transgender person means a person whose gender does not match with the gender assigned to that person at birth and includes trans men or trans women, person with intersex variation, gender queer, and person having such socio-cultural identities as Kinnar, Hijra, Aravani, and Jokta. And all these, the transgender person, are entitled to equal rights and protection under Article 14, 15, 19, 16, 21 of the Indian Constitutions. And there was a principle named Yogakarta principle. Just write it. Yogakarta principle. What it states? There are 6 rights. First, right to state protection from violence, discrimination, and other harms. Second, right to legal recognition without reference to sex, gender, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Third, right to bodily and mental integrity, autonomy, and self-determination. Fourth, right to be free from criminalization and any form of sanction. Fifth, right to protection from all form of poverty and social exclusion. And last, or sixth, right to equitable, adequate, safe and secure sanitation and hygiene. So Yogakarta principle for people with different sexual orientation and gender identity. So what are the challenges faced by the third gender communities in their developmental part? First is socio-economic challenges. Within the socio-economic challenges, first is marginalization and social exclusion, like stigma attached to sexual orientation that fall outside the expected social norms generally leads to the third gender people to the margins of the society, and they experience multiple forms of discrimination like racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. Next is discrimination at workplace. So as per National Human Rights Commission study in 2018, 96% of transgender are denied job. They denied job and forced to take low paying or undignified work for their livelihood. Next is education system. So poor policy within the education system, like restricted access to educational institution due to lack of special provisions, and poor implementation of policy for inclusion of transgenders community in the mainstream education system. Next is illiteracy. So low literacy levels due to factor like exclusion from family, society, poverty, insensitive attitudes of teachers, staff, violence, sexual abuse leading to high dropout rates. So as per census 2011, transgender has a 46% literacy level as compared to 74% in the general population. Next is problem of homelessness. So they lack housing services that meet their specific needs, and they live on cities' street. Which generally is very abusive environment. So lack of shelter home for same-sex couple, transgender, etc. Rampant abuse, harassment persist in their shelter system. So majority of domestic violence shelters do not accept gay men or transgender people. They generally face problem of transphobia. So negative feeling and attitude towards non-heterosexual behavior leads to transphobia. And this is the root of discrimination experienced by transgender people. Next is like barrier to healthcare. So due to the lack of providers with expertise in transgender medicine, lack of financial support, clinical facilities, they have restricted access to the health services. As an example, like HIV prevalence among transgender people in India was estimated to be 3.1% in 2017, second highest prevalence among all the key population in the country. Next is like psychological distress. So due to social rejection, violence, isolation, bullying in school, streets, etc., they experience anxiety, depression, substance use, and suicidal thoughts among them. So these are the socio-economic challenges they generally face. Next is political issues. What the political issues they face. First and the most important is underrepresentation. So the social stigma and injustice they face, their participation as an electorate has remained very low or at nearly negligible. So they have remained underrepresented in decision-making bodies like in assembly or parliament and urban local bodies. So till 2019, only 8% of transgender population have registered as other voters, and only 1% have exercised their voting rights. Second political issue they generally face is like violation of human rights. They are deprived from various human rights such as obtaining passport, driving license, ration card, identity cards, etc. Next is violation of fundamental rights. So they face problem in disclosing their gender identity, which violates their constitutional rights to personal liberty, freedom of expression, education, etc., etc. Now, let's give an analysis of Transgender Person Protection of Right Act 2019. Just write it. Analysis of Transgender Person Protection of Right Act 2019. So, as you all know, it was introduced by Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment to protect the right of transgender community and their welfare, and for matter concerned therewith and incidental thereto. Now, let's move to the features. First, it defines transgender as a person whose gender assigned at birth does not match with his or her perceived gender. And it includes trans men, trans women, person with intersex variation, gender queer, person with socio-cultural identities such as Kinner and Hijra. Now, what are the concerns associated with this definition? So this definition of transgender person is very vague and misleading. So transgender have different gender identity that what was assigned to them at birth, while intersex or intersex indicate diversity of gender based on a biological characteristics. So this definition is very vague and misleading. The next feature of this act is like it allows self-perception of identity and mandate a certificate from district magistrate declaring the holder to be a transgender. Now, what actually the concern associated with this provision? It is against the principle of self-determination. And there are no provision for an appeal or review of the decision taken by the district magistrate. Now, what are the other features? Like other feature is like government will take measure to ensure participation of transgender person in society, their rescue, their rehabilitation. Government try to provide vocational training and self-employment. Next provision or next feature of this act, like it prohibits discrimination against the transgender persons in area like education, employment, and healthcare. Next provision is like provision for penalty and punishment vary between 6 months to 2 years in cases of offenses and sexual harassment against the transgender. Next provision or next feature of this act is it provides every transgender person shall have a right to reside and to be with their family. And if their family does not want them or unable to take care for them, then they will be sent to the rehabilitation center. Now, what initiative have been taken for the transgender person? What initiative? First, in the form of administrative measures. I already discussed the Transgender Person Protection of Right Act 2019. This is the first point. Second point, like National Council of Transgender Person, which was constituted under the Transgender Person Protection of Right Act, and it consists of chairperson and vice chairpersons. There is national portal for transgender person, and what actually this national portal for transgender person will do, it would help transgender community in digitally apply for a certificate and identity card. Now, most important for your examination perspective from sociology is socio-economic measure taken by government. Socio-economic measure. First, employment. So Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act brought employment opportunities for transgender people. First point. Second, Smile scheme. Support for marginalized individual for livelihood and enterprise. That is Smile scheme. It is a center sector scheme and formulated by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment and implemented from 2021-22 to 2025-26 26. And it aimed to provide welfare and rehabilitation to transgender community and people engaged in the act of begging. And it also provide composite health package like National Health Authority under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare provide inclusive and composite health package for transgender under Ayushman Bharat Yojana. Next is shelter home, Garima Grah, Garima Grah. Garima Grah. So it proposes it purpose is to provide shelter to transgender person with basic amenities like food, medical care, recreational facilities, etc., etc. New education policy of 2020. So new education policy provides for setting up gender inclusion fund and classify transgender children as socio-economically disadvantaged group. And it allows students to study without discriminating them based on their gender, class, and caste. And new education policy also provide awareness, inclusive curriculum, like inclusive language. Focus must be on inclusive language like using partner instead of husband and wife. Now, just write impact of COVID-19 pandemic on human rights of transgender person. Impact of COVID-19 pandemic on human rights of transgender persons. So COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated inequalities prevalent in all regions of the world and disproportionate impact on lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, and gender diverse LGBTQI plus persons. First, in the form of violence. Second, in the form of health. So the overloaded health system led to the LGBTQI plus people being deprioritized for treatment like HIV testing, hormonal treatment, gender affirming treatment for trans people. Third, economic. So abandoned by family and loss of job due to COVID-19 further increased the poverty, homelessness among the LGBTQI community. So instance of humiliation by family member, violence, forced marriages, and suicide among LGBTQ community rose as they were forced to stay in home. Example, death of 2 women in Tamil Nadu by suicide. Next is reliefs. So since a large number of LGBTQ person do not have proper government ID documents or identity cards, they face difficulty in accessing relief care packages and services being provided by the state. Now let's move to the next, that is, what measure can be taken? What can be done? So first is like in the form of economic inclusion. So policies and initiative must prioritize the skill training, employability, entrepreneurship of LGBTQI plus people to ensure their economic inclusion and raise their economic capital. Second is policy intervention. So formal non-discrimination policies should be incorporated in all or into all businesses And policy should be developed by engaging stakeholders. Third is like rehabilitation. Fourth is like awareness, affirmative actions. Like reservation should be provided in proportion to their population. Representation. So by recognizing their civil and political rights of the third gender. So these can be the initiative can be taken by the government to improve the condition of transgender in India. Now, this is all you have to know about transgenders. Now, we have done with our first topic, that is gender.